Black Lives Matter. I wish I could scream it into the microphone, but that would be unprofessional. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Financial Planning in Our Modern World, the show about financial planning, financial niches, and answering financial questions. I'm your host, Aaron De La Cruz, and I'm on a mission to cross financial bridges with modern solutions. Now, typically, the podcasts are a little bit more lighter within subjects and other things around. But the tragic death of George Floyd sent people to the streets to protest and fight for equality. And I thought to myself, what made George Floyd's death different? I asked myself this because other innocent black lives were taken before this. Then I was listening to a podcast, This American Life, discussing this exact question, and they said it perfectly. The murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis was the straw that broke the camel's back. Yes, I have watched the entire video. Yes, it was very uncomfortable. But that video made me reach out to people to help me do this mini series. On June 27th, 2020, I volunteered at the Greensboro Black Lives Matter mural painting. Apart from releasing this podcast mini series, I felt that giving my time to the efforts on the ground of this movement was something that I needed to do. I wanted to support the Black and African American community and let them know that this Latinx person stood in solidarity. Witnessing an entire community come together to create a work of art was such a powerful sight to see. The entire day was so peaceful and very moving. Now, the reason I am doing this podcast is because I feel it is the responsibility of us who have a platform or business to speak out, especially those who truly believe and support diversity and inclusion in the financial service professional. My podcast is focused on the future and the world, inside and outside financial planning. I wanted to make more than just a statement on my Twitter. I reached out to the Association of African American Financial Advisor, also known as Quad A, and asked if anybody would be willing to speak on what has happened as well as speak about Black and African American success planning. Almost immediately, I had a positive response. Angela Ayu asked me some questions and asked me for an outline of the podcast review. She notified me that she posted on Quad A's discussion board with my contact information. Soon, I was met with a few emails from others interested in speaking with me, and I had one young planner actually call me. The outreach was so fast, and people were extremely willing to talk to me. I was taken by the amount of interest and excitement that I decided to make a mini series to ensure everyone's story would be heard. I wanted this project to be the best that I could make it, so I took my time in getting it out to ensure that it got the attention that it deserved. Thank you to those who participated in this podcast. Today's episode is very special because it is also the first episode of the Black Lives Matter miniseries. Today's guest is Dominique Henderson. Some of you may know him as the CFP on YouTube. Dominique is the founder of DJH Capital Management and the Jumpstart Coaching Lab. He is on a mission to help coach the next generation of financial professionals. He also runs his own YouTube channel. I have attached his resources to the podcast description. I highly recommend that you watch his videos or attend his live streams if you are starting in the financial field or making a career change. In today's podcast, I asked Dominique questions related to his experience with Quad A, what tips he would give young black planners. I also asked him about some possible effects people in the profession could experience as a result of the protest. I have attached this information in the podcast description. One more thing before we get into the podcast. I want to take a moment to say the names of three people who have catapulted the Black Lives Matter movement to new heights. May they rest in power. On May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was pinned down by Minneapolis police officers for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. He cried out, "I can't breathe." Then he showed no signs of life. There are multiple videos showing officers doing nothing as George Floyd screams for air. The entire world was about to see his death. On February 23rd, 2020, Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed 25-year-old black man, was shot and killed May 7, 2020. His killers were arrested after a video emerged of the shooting. They were roaming free between that time. The whole world watched the video and expressed outrage and demanded for justice to be served. I have attached a news link to the description of the podcast for those wanting to know more. On March 23rd, 2020, Breonna Taylor, a 25-year-old black woman, was shot and killed in her apartment. She was asleep after a long shift. Her death was horrific as multiple bullets passed through her body. On June 11th, 2020, Louisville, Kentucky announced Brianna's law. Brianna's law bans no-knock warrants and now sets procedures for executing all search warrants. I have attached the links to the Louisville, Kentucky government's website. Thank you for staying with me. Now, let's begin the podcast. Dominique, welcome to Financial Planning in Our Modern World. How are you today?
Man, I'm doing great, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, do you mind giving the audience a little bit of background, who you are and what you do? I know who you are.
The YouTube CFP.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. So this is my 20th year in financial services, and I always considered it a treat every year that turns over, and I have a birthday in this industry. It's a blessing because I've seen a lot. But I am I have my own registered investment advisory firm, which is DJH Capital Management. So that is about 4 years old this August. So I've been doing wealth management for quite some time now, client facing for the last 10 years or so. And before that on the operations side. And then I have the Jumpstart community for financial professionals. So founder of both of those. And just kind of really consider myself an advocate for good financial advice in a nutshell.
That's great. Do you mind explaining how'd you get into the industry? So you're kind of a veteran already. Now you're mentoring people.
Yeah. So I started in 98. I graduated with a degree from Prairie View at A&M University, good old PVU. And I started working for a hedge fund not too long after that, really in the operations department, kind of making sure that the portfolio strategies that were being executed by the hedge fund were, being supported by, all the trade and reconciliation. So basically that was kind of my job there. And I stayed there for about 8 years. But it really gave me a good foray into the industry and made me realize a couple things. The first is that I enjoyed the retail side of money management versus the institutional side. It was just too far removed. So I took a couple of years off, maybe almost about 18 months, and did real estate. Not really good timing from 2006 to 2008. But I ended up finding a broker dealer where I started to grow a book of business, got a mentor, and really started to understand how one-on-one, client-facing financial services actually worked. Got my 7, my 66, my life and health. And that broker dealer went defunct. And so I ended up, needing to find my clients a home. Didn't really do that, but ended up finding someone that knew me at the hedge fund that was working at a Dallas RIA at the time, fairly large RIA. And I ended up landing there for about 6 years, building a muni desk from scratch. I think at the time I left was about $500 million under management and about 600 families. I was responsible for about a third of that. And so that's really where I learned how the business of, financial planning, investment planning, and all this stuff that goes in between when it comes to finding out how finding out how a client's going to reach their goals. And in about 2016, midsummer 2016, I decided that, there was probably some room for DJH Capital Management to start doing what I felt is how I wanted to serve clients. And so August of 2010, somewhere thereabouts, I started DJH Capital Management and been running since then. And probably in the last 12 to 18 months, the idea of Jumpstart and mentoring aspiring financial professionals came about through another opportunity, which is another long story kind of. But anyways, I got into the business of marketing to financial advisors and helping them grow their practice. And I decided to, swim kind of downstream to the people that were looking to get into this industry, needed help getting started, didn't have the confidence to do this, just needed help with designations and what do you choose, what path do you go down, and started consulting there. Grew to love it because I love this industry, and that's what I've been doing. And I think Jumpstart officially, LLC and the whole nine, got started January 2020, but a little less formally, probably August of 2019.
Wonderful. So that's a lot. You've been in the industry. It's great. It's great that you've given back and that you're doing what you do, because you are, like you said, mentoring a lot of young professionals, or when I say young professionals, it could be someone entering the field and in their 40s. Like, absolutely. So there's always room for growth and change.
Yes.
And so today, that's why I've invited you onto my platform. It's because I messaged Quad A with a little bit of a serious issue. The tragic death of George Floyd has sparked the Black Lives Movement even further.
Mhm.
And I felt like it was responsibility of those who had a platform to speak out about a movement. I'm not talking about monetizing off of it. I'm really saying a heartfelt community saying that we're sorry and that we do need to make the effort. And with that, I messaged Quad A. Do you mind speaking a little bit about how Quad A has impacted your life?
Okay. So yeah, Quad A, I've been a member for about 2 or 3 years now. And we have obviously a annual conference. And I think that is just the tip of the iceberg when you come, when you start thinking about all the different things that Quad A can bring to a person like myself. I think the fact of the matter that it's a community of like-minded professionals that look like me is a great benefit. And we can start to, have synergies and different conversations around how we, broaden the platform, if you will, for those that are coming behind us, whether they are of the Black and Brown community or not. So I think the professional development aspect of it is, again, just the tip of the iceberg. I've also had prospective clients find me on their website when they're searching for financial advice. So there's just a lot of benefits from being a part of a professional organization, one especially, with the caliber of Quad A.
Does it ever become overwhelming belonging to so many different organizations? I'm assuming you belong to FPA, the CFP board, Quad A, you run your own stuff, so it must be overwhelming at sometimes, correct?
So I don't think so. I actually am not as involved as most people would think. So I have a membership with Quad A. I'm obviously a CFP. FPA, I do more informally. I don't necessarily participate. I used to, and I used to have NAPFA. I used to have all these different things going on. But what I've found to be the most impactful, at least for me, is to be strategically focused on maybe a couple of things that align so that I can be more efficient with the use of my time. And so Quad A and the platform that I'm building on with Jumpstart is very much in alignment. And so I don't have to spend my energy so inefficiently across a bunch of different things because we've got some dual goals, if you will, when it comes to my partnership with Quad A.
Wonderful. That leads actually into my next question. What is your advice to future Black and African American financial planners, those who are entering the field for the first time, those who are looking for their spot in the world?
In a word, Aaron, probably just find a mentor. I was given this question yesterday, ironically enough, and I was like, the best thing somebody can do for their career, if they're really serious about this, is find somebody in the industry that you want to emulate, even if they don't look like you, and get them to pull on them, get them to mentor you if you can, if they have time. If not, find someone else, because that insider knowledge is by far some of the best education that you're going to receive and help you with the path that you're trying to develop for yourself from a career standpoint. So that's why I do virtual mentorship through Jumpstart, because I think that's one of the biggest components. I mean, beyond CFP education or financial planning degrees, which are all very great, if you can have somebody that is giving you a feedback loop based on your progress and giving you accountability, it's very much so like why people, go to the gym and they hire trainers, is because it helps them, it pushes them to a point of probably further than they would go on their own. So I think it's very important to find a mentor if I was to give one piece of advice.
Wonderful, wonderful. Let's move on to the next question. And you said something about mentors, and those mentors obviously work for companies. You've been through a lot of companies yourself. What should these future leaders be looking for within a company? Earlier, I talked to somebody else and they mentioned work culture and how work culture is really impactful to somebody's progress and growth within their own financial planning career.
I think one of the first things that I've told people, and I may have even mentioned this on a podcast, I have all these conversations all the time and they start to run together, but I think you start with why. Why do you want to get into the industry? Hopefully it's not money motivated, because that's not the best motivation to keep you going with all the hard times that you may have along the way. But I think if you start with why you want to do this, why you want to help, why you want to give back, that's going to lead you to who. And the who is the mentor, really, that we talked about in the previous question. So the why leads to the who leads to the how. And the how can be going into a lot of different things, but the how really leads to, do you want to go down the non-traditional route, like more financial coaching, where you're not doing investment advice, or you're doing maybe credit repair, or behavioral management or things of that nature? Or do you want to go more traditional, Wells Fargo, Wirehouse, things of that nature, where you have to get your 7s and your 6s and all those other licenses? I think if you start with why you want to do this, you're going to find, hopefully, a mentor, somebody you can shadow, which would be your who. And as you start to open that dialogue loop and that feedback loop, it's going to lead you to how and what channel you want to go down. And that will help you with finding a cultural fit that aligns with your worldviews. Because I talk to a lot of millennial aspiring financial professionals that like, hey, I don't want to work for a big bank and sell products that I don't believe in and things of that nature. And I totally get that, right? It depends on how you've been brought up, what you've been exposed to, and things of that nature that pretty much inform that decision. But what I would say is, if you do that why, who, how, then that's going to better lead you to the path you should go down and help you align with a company that's going to, benefit you, and as well as benefit and bring value to them and their client base.
How it leads me to, could you elaborate on the sense of how somebody was raised, and the sense of like, does that mean how I contact Quad A to get in contact with you? Does somebody just email? What's the process look like on that point of view? How does someone do it professionally?
If they wanted to
have a conversation about the how.
Yeah, I think let's just say this person doesn't have a mentor, right? And they're just kind of looking around. Like, what I've always said is, and this is the reason why I wake up in the morning with a lot of motivation to continue with Jumpstart, because the feedback that I inevitably get is that I can't find anything else like this. Before I found your YouTube channel, I didn't know what else to kind of look at. And that's a resource. And hopefully, there will be many other people that do things like this in the future, because I think it's needed. And I obviously can't reach everybody. I don't have time for that. But that's a start, right? That's a free community that you can plug into. You can not only find like-minded people that are at different points on their journey to becoming a financial professional, or a successful one, next generation, however you want to look at that. But you also can plug into people that have been doing it for a while, like myself, like Preston, like Sandra Davis. These are names that are inside the Facebook group. You can join a professional organization, right? Some of them have different membership levels depending on where you're at along your journey. That's always a really good thing to do. You could plug into a study group that, maybe 5 or 6 of you that all want to be financial professionals or coaches or advisors. Maybe you're all getting ready to take your SIE together or something like that. So I think finding a community, an affinity of my community, and mine is just a few, right? I know a couple of people, like, for instance, like the Elevate community that's on Facebook that Sandy Smith runs. There's also a friend of mine, Kyle Ciotti, that runs a group that's just for people that want to do the Series 65. So all these groups are out there. I mean, Google and YouTube will help you find them. It's just a matter of really kind of settling down and doing that work on where do you want to go in the industry to kind of find what path makes the most sense for you.
Wonderful. Now, we just talked about these great resources. You named a few names. Some of these names, I know them because I've seen them everywhere on LinkedIn and Facebook. One of the famous ones is Hannah Moore. That does a lot of work too. And I hate to move into like a little bit of a darker topic, but I did call you to talk about the Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on and how we are supposed to be progressing. At first, it wasn't talked about a lot. I was on financial planning Twitter. It was very spoken, swept under the rug. And then it made me realize that some of our Black and brown brothers and sisters are out there protesting peacefully. And some of them, the reality is that they are getting arrested. Do you think this will have an impact on their career? And what advice would you have to say? And this is for those who are listening. This does not mean that you should go get arrested intentionally expecting a job to come out. There is responsibilities, but there's still that injustice and systematic racism that we're still seeing.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. I think so. This is a very personal decision, right?
Right.
And I think at the end of the day, I'm no lawyer. I have no legal background, and I don't know if you get arrested for protesting, if that's a misdemeanor or a felony. But let's just say it's a felony, which I don't think it is, but let's just say it is. That could be reported on your U4 for a very long time, right?
And you have to report it to.
Yeah, you'll have to disclose that. And so if you're going to go the traditional route where you're going to create a U4 and basically a footprint, a digital footprint for your whole financial services career from beginning to end, that's something to consider, right? Because any broker dealer, FINRA associated firm is going to have that, and they can use that, against you. It is what it is. So now I don't know about if the same is the case with misdemeanor. I just know from going through my own that the whole question, do you have a felony? That's on there. So you need to be aware of that. And I think, you have to do what's best for you. If your stance, whether you peacefully protest and get arrested or whatever that is, if that's more in alignment and allows you to sleep at night because you're standing up for something you believe in, then do it and let the chips fall where they may. Maybe that it's good that you don't get hired by that firm that wouldn't accept you anyway, especially if they don't allow you the leeway to kind of explain that away. But I do know that will be somewhat of an impediment, right? You could definitely be shooting yourself in the foot or kind of committing some professional suicide, because that is going to be on your U4 as a mark that you'll have to continually disclose. And that your securities record is an open public record. I don't know if people know about that as a financial advisor, but as soon as you get fingerprinted and you do your 6 or 7 or all that kind of stuff, it's open record. Anybody can go to the IAPD website and look you up. So you have to kind of think about that going forward and weigh the pros and cons.
Well, thank you for your input in that. And it's just part of the reality that I said. And like you said, everybody's allowed to look you up. I think that not many people are aware of it, that you can look up everybody and what they have done. But it's out there. Like if you money laundered, it's there. Your name will be spoken of for the rest of your career if you have one.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to draw the line between, at least as the regulation stands right now, this is not done for people that don't charge for or give investment advice, because the Securities Act of 1940 is specifically around investment advice, which is the reason why that particular licensing and regulation exists. As far as FINRA is concerned, the Financial Industries Regulatory Authority. So that's something different than if you say you're going to hang your shingle as a financial coach and you're going to just do cash management and credit repair and maybe student loan counseling, no investments. Well, you won't have a U4, right?
Right.
There is no ADV or any of that kind of stuff to file. You don't get a CRD. So all that stuff, just to kind of divide the line, if people don't want to, I don't want to muddy the waters, but there is a definite line. Now, I don't know how long the industry will continue to hold that standard whereby financial coaches or people that don't do the investment advice don't have to be regulated. That may change in the future. But for now, you definitely want to consider that if you're going down what we'll call the more traditional route where you have to be licensed.
Right, and this is pretty brand new. Our industry is about 30 years old. I mean, it's a little bit older than I am. And so this is the time. We've never seen anything. Our industry has not seen it. It's just been stockbrokers that saw this maybe back in the 50s, the 60s. So our field is being exposed to this. So this is why I've been asking people, what do you think might happen? What is the possibility?
Yeah, I know that, if it were me and I was, looking to hire somebody, I'll probably at least ask the question about why is this on your U4? We've all had our past, whether that be credit, bankruptcy, foreclosures, things like that. We make better financial decisions. I'm guilty of that, right? That happened on me. Yeah. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, the employer that I was hired by in 2010, allow me to explain my situation. So I would probably give somebody the benefit of the doubt. But then again, I do have my own RIA. I am independent. I have a lot more leeway than, say, a Chase Bank or a Wells Fargo or somebody like that would happen, because they're dealing in a large quantity of advisors, and they can't always be as granular as an RIA could, like myself. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're going to move forward with that and saying that these leaders are ready to come into the financial planning world and they pass their CFP exam. Off the top of your head, because I know we've already discussed this, what is the greatest resources for Black and African American financial planners? Would you recommend that they jump into FPA or maybe join Quad A as soon as they get their first paycheck?
I guess it depends on a couple of things. So let's take the entrepreneur that is going to be running their own business for the most part, building their own clients. They have an element of self-employment with what they're doing. And let's talk about somebody that works for somebody.
Okay.
So I think in either case, you can join a professional organization. I think those things are going to be good for you, right? Now, when you're talking about FPA versus Quad A and things of that nature, obviously I'm going to have a bias towards Quad A. And that's just because if we're talking about somebody that is Black and brown, I mean, the fact of you're getting a community with people of color that kind of understand your struggles, your backgrounds, probably have very similar backgrounds to you, things of that nature. I think that's probably going to be a better fit from a synergy standpoint. And I mean, if you can afford I think it's what, $350 a year. I mean, it's well worth it, right? Now let's say, you're going to be more entrepreneurial. Jumpstart, I think, is an excellent opportunity for you just because depending on where you're trying to go, if you're trying to grow your book, I get a lot of existing advisors ask me to help them with marketing and things of that nature, finding their ideal client. There's probably resources inside of Quad A. I haven't utilized those resources, but there's a lot of things that is being offered inside of the Facebook group and the people that choose to work with me to help them grow their business and grow their practice. Because as an entrepreneur, that's what you're most concerned about, right? The conferences are great. The professional development is great. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get cheeks in the seat, right? Let's just be honest. That's what you're trying to do. And so the ways that you can, accelerate that and or find avenues to accelerate that is great. I haven't been too successful. I don't know too many financial advisors that have just had, a lot of inbound traffic from, FPA, Quad A, or even NAPFA with, prospective clients that have, come through those sites and then been referred to the advisor. Some of that happens, but largely that's going to be a task that you need to learn how to do very well. And if you get connected with somebody or some organization or some system that allows you to do that, that's probably the best investment of your dollars, especially if you're running your own book.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Last question, and this is my favorite part of the show. You are a CFP, therefore you are bounded to a fiduciary duty, so you've accepted it, saying, what do you think about the F word, fiduciary?
I'm a little different here, probably than what you're expecting, in that I first look at people that come to me for financial advice as they have a problem to solve, right? Most people don't, just spend money willy-nilly. They're looking to trade their dollars for something more valuable than the dollar they're trading in the form of a solution. No matter if that's financial service or that's some razors off of Amazon, right? It's the same concept. And so from that standpoint, it really levels the playing field. Like the whole fee-based, fee-only, commission, I mean, that whole thing, just throw that out the water. I think that really a lot to do under that term that basically means just treat people like you want to be treated and offer them the solution that brings them the most amount of value, right? So from a fiduciary standpoint, I definitely believe in it. Do I lead with it? I think it's actually just woven into my ethos on how I deal with people, because I'm always considering, what would I want? Or, how would I do my mom or dad, right? Like that's kind of my fallback. Would I put my mom or dad in this product? Would I buy it myself or this particular service? And I think if you, react and, create conversations with clients around that, you're going to be acting as a fiduciary. You're going to be putting their interests first. And that's just kind of the way I think about it. I don't think it's more complicated than that.
And people want to make it complicated.
I think there's a lot of
Red tape, would you say?
well, no, I think there's a lot of political wrangling for, the different sides on that argument, because let's just break this down, right? So we got an industry that's roughly about, let's call it, anywhere from 45 to 50 years old. It largely started off with the broker, the middleman between services and products and the person that needed them. And what we've seen is this, decoupling or disintermediation really between, I don't need a broker anymore, right? I can go to Vanguard for 10 basis points, or I can go to Betterment or anything, right? So the person in the middle has, not become as important, especially when their sole role, 100% of the responsibility used to be, here's access to all these things, right? I don't need you for that anymore. What I do need you for is intelligent conversation, asking me better questions, getting to know my real situation so that you can provide me solutions at a much higher level. Because, if I make $250K a year, an hour of my time is worth X, right? I don't really have time to spend 4 or 6 hours on the weekend going through my employee benefits or my tax, right? So from a financial advice standpoint, that's where the value is in the relationship and giving them higher level solutions. The value is not in showing them or telling them they should buy Apple versus Amazon. It's just not. So I think advisors that realize that it takes a little bit more EQ than IQ in the age that we live in, and moving towards to, by the way, are the ones that are going to be the most successful. And to me, those people already realize that they have a fiduciary capacity with their clients. So I think this whole argument, the whole argument around fee-based versus fee-only is actually kind of foolish, because we should have evolved past that long ago, because information is commoditized. Clients don't need us to give them more information. They need us to help them make better choices with all the information that's out there.
I agree. So as we come to an end to the show, do you have any questions for me?
No, man, I really appreciate you doing this and providing this platform. It's kind of funny to be on the other end of this. So I don't often get a time to do this, because I spend so much time on my own platform interviewing other people or just talking myself. But no, I definitely appreciate the conversation and appreciate the platform, man.
Absolutely. And for those that are listening or watching on YouTube, I have links below down Dom's platforms and everything that he does. And so is it okay if they contact you on LinkedIn with any questions as well?
Absolutely, man. I'm an open book. Sometimes they may take a little while before I get back to you, but I'll definitely try my best.
Fantastic. Well, Dom, thanks for being on Financial Planning in Our Modern World, and I hope to have you again.
Absolutely, Aaron. You take care, man.
You take care. I would like to thank Dominique for coming on to the podcast and giving his opinions. The podcast you just heard reflects the opinions of only the host and the guest, who are individual persons and do not represent the views of the companies for which they are employed or have been previously employed. The opinions and views expressed do not reflect any views except those of the individual. Information about the guest can be found in the podcast description. I'm your host, Aaron De La Cruz, and I'm on a mission to cross financial bridges with modern solutions. I will see you at the next bridge.